Hi, this is Stephanie Eddy, and I wanted to give you just a quick tutorial on doing Viking knit with leather. So I'm going to be using the 1/2" Lazee Daizee Viking knit tool here, and this is going to be 1mm leather cord. All you'll need to do is insert your cord into the top anchor hole, and then you're going to feed the leather through the daisy head. And I'm going to use every other loop on the daisy head. There are 12 on this head, and I'm going to skip every other one and use 6. Just going to feed that through there. And this will be more like sewing as opposed to using wire for Viking knit. So this is actually a little bit faster and easier, particularly if you're just learning how to do Viking knit. This might be a good way to start. Now I normally use 6 or 7 feet of leather at a time. For the demonstration I'm using a shorter piece, but you can use a longer piece because it won't tangle. If you used that length of wire, 6 to 7 feet, then it would be more difficult and you would have a harder time trying to control it. With the leather, it's very easy and flexible and doesn't get tangled as easily. So once you've threaded the loops onto the daisy head, you're going to take a flat nose plier and you're just going to lightly flatten about 1 inch of the free end. Then you're going to take a darning needle and then just push it through. So now we'll start doing the Viking knit weave, which is just a matter of going underneath the loop, and in this case pulling your cording through and forming another loop. Go under the loop, pull through, and continue around. You can see how much easier and faster this is if you've ever tried it with wire. This is much easier. Just continue around. When you come to the area where that anchor hole is, you're still going to work over the top of it. You're just going to go underneath. You're still underneath the loop. Continue your loops around. And once you have 3 or 4 rows, you're going to want to pull that anchor tail out so that it's not in your way. I'll show you that in just a second when I get around here again. So I'm going underneath the loop. Now, so this is the anchor hole is going from top to bottom. So if you follow it through, this is the loop that it's on. All I have to do is just pull this up out of the way, and it's going to pull that anchor tail out. And you can just leave it there because it'll be cut off at the end anyway. So from now on, you're just going to continue doing your Viking knit stitch until you run out of cord. And let me show you how to add cord. So here we are at the end. I'm going to need to add some additional cording. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a crimp to add my cording. This is a barrel crimp, just a round tubular crimp. I'm going to put the crimp on, and I'll grab some additional leather. Okay, and I'll put the new piece of leather in the crimp as well. And you need to pull this up into what I call the rung area. The rung area is the area between the loops. So you have your Viking knit loops, but you also have this connecting loop or connecting wire here. In this case, it's cording. So this is the loop and the rung. The rungs are like little stair steps. The rung area is where you want that crimp to be placed. And then you'll just take your flat nose pliers, and you don't have to crimp this very hard. If you crimp it too hard, you could actually cut through the leather, so don't do that. And I'm using a contrasting crimp so that you can see what I'm doing. Normally I would use, in this case, I would probably use a dark gunmetal crimp, or I could use a permanent marker, and I could also just make it black, but I want you to see what I'm doing. Okay, so I put in the rung space there, so it's between the two loops. Then I'll take my end again and flatten it, put the needle on, and I'll continue around. So I'm going to hold that in place, and I'll just go to the next loop area, continue around. So this is the addition with the new leather. And when I come to where the splice is, I just go right over the top of it. So here's where the splice is. So I'm still going underneath the loop, and I'm just pulling my, what's going to be now my rung area goes right across where the crimp is. And I'll just, whoops. And so I'll just pull that straight across and continue around. And I'll do one more row, and then I'll just actually cut this so that I just have maybe, I don't know, 1/16 of an inch left. And then that will be buried inside once you do the draw. Now, when you're working with leather as opposed to wire, drawing down is a little bit different. You're not going to be using a draw plate. You're actually going to just pull it by hand. The trick is that you don't necessarily know what your length is going to be. When you gauge with wire, you know you're going through a draw plate and you can pull it down. You know approximately how many inches you may get. With leather or something flexible, some flexible cording, it's going to be whatever it is when you pull it out. So you want to make sure if you're making a bracelet you make it long enough, because you can always make it shorter. So here's one that I've done that is, let's see how long it is. It is about 5 inches. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull it off the daisy head, or off the tool. Got the daisy head on, and I can actually just go ahead and pull it. So that's what I'm going to end up with. That length and that diameter of leather. So this was the 1mm leather with 6 loops on the 1/2 inch Lazee Daizee tool. So I started out with the 5 inches, and when I pulled it, I have 7 inches, so I gained 2 inches on that. Okay, to finish this off, I'm going to remove the daisy head, and you do that by just cutting the loops that are above the head. And I just cut straight across. And because this isn't wire, you'll have some different issues as far as finishing this off. So you need to pull off anything that's loose, and you should just have 6 loops and 1 loose cord. So what I do is I pull one row out so that I have enough cording here to work with. Then I'm going to thread this cord back through the open loops. And then I'll be able to pull that tight, and then it won't be unraveling on me. Okay, so I've gone through all the loops, and I'll just pull it up tight like that. I will put it back on my needle. Now there's 2 ways you can do this. It depends on what your finishing technique is going to be as far as putting an end cap on here. I normally go through all of the loops again and up and tie a knot right there. Now I could just go ahead and put a crimp right here to hold this, which works fine. That would look like this. So I would just pull it up to the end and put the crimp on the end, and that would suffice. The other thing that I can do, depending on how my finishing technique is, I might want to make another loop and tie, and then I can actually glue the ends. So in this case, I'll just leave that loop as a finishing. Now, if I want to put it in this kind of a finding, I'm going to need to flatten this a little bit, and it may or not fit. If it doesn't fit, what you need to do is take your flat nose pliers, and you're going to want to crunch it down a little bit, but don't do it too hard, because again, you can actually cut through this leather. So you can make that end, you can put some glue in the end, and then you can actually fit it into the end, and you can finish it off that way. That's one way to finish it off. The other way you can do it, so let me work on this end. So on this end, this was the end that the head was on with the loops. This is basically finished on the other end. You can actually just pull it up and it's not going to unravel. But I generally do take, again, my needle and I do like to make it come together a little bit better. Tie another knot there. In this case, maybe I'll use the crimp instead of the tie to hold it in place. Crimp down gently. Just enough to hold it. Trim that off. So again, two finishing techniques. One would be flattening this end, and you would want to think about this, what your finding is going to be as far as your end cap beforehand. So this could fit into here, and I would glue it into there and finish it off that way. On the other end, I could take a piece of wire, I could put it into the end, just to enough to secure it, cut it off, and then I could put a different kind of an end cap. I could put something decorative on the end like this and finish it off this way with either beads or just a simple wire wrap or something on the end. So either way, these are the two ways of finishing off your ends. And that is Viking Knit with Leather. Thanks again. This is Stephanie Eddy. I hope to see you again soon.